Hey y'all, it is chapter 22, which is the last chapter of this book. Let me put on some lip gloss. Okay, let's see if Aiden can come get his woman or if Eva is gonna go get her man. And they both stand up to their parents and do what they need to do. All right, you don't know how happy I am that you made it. I don't think I'd be able to go through with this without you by my side, Eva said to Corey in between taking huge gulps of air. She felt woozy, but still she was determined to soldier on. They were in the studio's dressing room turned bridal changing and staging area, and it was currently 7:34. The quicker this was over and done with, the better. The way Eva had it figured, she and Kevin and their splashy morning midtown wedding were going on as big lead into the 9 o'clock hour. If all went as planned, by this time tomorrow, she would officially be old news and she could go on with her life of making news of people who really wanted to be in front of the cameras and splashed all over the papers. Eva sucked in one more giant gulp of air, but the tight stay of her corset style dress prevented her from taking it in fully. When she got up too fast, once again she felt dizzy. Instantly noting her distress, Corey grabbed hold of Eva's shoulders and pushed her forward. The tightness of the dress strained against the pressure of her bending. Okay, lady, no standing for you just yet. And of course I made it. Where else would I be but with my best friend when she's getting married? And after your last text, I knew you needed me here. Corey looked around and lowered her voice. Though for the life of me, I still can't understand why you're going through with it. Getting pissed at me if you want, but I have to say it. It's obvious that this is not what you want. I'm glad somebody said it to her because Eva's head shot up again and she gave Corey a hard stare. Corey rolled her eyes and pushed her head back down. Oh, save it, girl. I know you better than your own mama. You're not fooling me one bit with this old, it's new again, and I found love bullshit. Corey, please, just let it go. No, it's not ideal and not the dream, and of course, this is not what I want, but I don't want to talk about that now. This is this is what it has to be to get things back on track. Besides, my mother will be back here in a second. The last thing I need is her hearing you spout off, and then I have to deal with her today, on top of everything else. Corey crossed her arms. Everything else like what? The fact you're about to marry tall, dark, and spineless when you're really in love with tall, dark, and... Eva put up a hand, fighting to keep a hold on her quickly spiraling emotions. Tall, dark, and doesn't care about me? That was a short-lived fantasy that needs to go into the file of forgotten memories. What good does it do for me to think about him now? It's not like he's here and suddenly declaring his love. Eva felt a lump that signaled threatening tears. Just freaking great. She blinked rapidly. I swear, Corey, if you make me cry and I have to go through makeup torture again, I may never forgive you. He's not here. So this conversation is just silly. Waste of time, exercise, and self-flagellation. Now, can we drop it? Eva didn't want to rehash things with Corey. It was painful enough being where she was and going through with this sham without Corey's interjections about the obvious. These past 3 weeks had been her own personal torture. Seeing Kevin again and going on a few stage dates for the camera, all the while hoping, like out of some dream movie sequence, that Aiden would come for her and sweep her off her feet to ride off into the sunset. What the hell? She was an idiot for even dreaming it. Sunsets were overrated anyways. For his part, Kevin wanted to pick things right back up. bring his box of crap up from the lobby and straight back into her apartment, pretend what they went through was just a blip, his on-air humiliation just a mistake, his time with the hostess just a momentary lapse. But Eva knew it wasn't. She knew it by the way his eyes still wandered and the times when they didn't. She even saw it in his over-attentiveness when they were out and he was supposedly courting her. Sure, he said all the right things and made all the right moves, but she knew nothing had changed. Or maybe everything had changed. Her eyes were finally open, and she could see that Kevin was in this for all the wrong, or hell, maybe it was all the right reasons. So she made up a story about him having to win her over before he could bring that damn box back up from the lobby and into her apartment again. But that wasn't the truth. She and Kevin were probably perfect for each other. They were two fakers, making their way in the big city, paying their dues in the most expensive possible way. The truth was, she was keeping Kevin at arm's length and at her nights free in the sad hope that Aiden would come to her, that he said he had changed his mind and she could stay, and she could say she had changed hers, that he said he wanted more and wanted to be with her, that he said he wanted not just her nights, but her days too, forever, as she now knew she wanted his. But within a short time, Eva came to know it was nothing but a foolish dream, one that had her constantly blinking back tears and swallowing down her true feelings. She tried her best to let that dream go after the night she sung her song and gone into Kevin's arms. Aiden made his choice when he sent Kevin back to her, and she, like the dutiful talent she was, had followed through and finished the job. The camera caught it all, and the segment the following Monday was an instant hit. Social media had gone crazy, the majority of watchers clearly in the hashtag Team Kev Ev camp. For his part, Aiden never turned to the set for any of her dates with Kevin, and Lou was now fully in charge and doing a great job of playing up the couple. And if Eva played this right, her new life, the one she had planned from the very start, would begin in a few hours. It was odd though, because in some strange way, she still always felt Aiden's presence over her shoulder. And a voice in her head kept asking her that question he had posed all those nights ago. Why are you getting married? The question still gnawed at her, rubbing along her spine in the most uncomfortable way. Now, when she closed her eyes and saw herself at the altar, it was never with Kevin or any of the men she had dated, but always with some faceless man. The longed-for image of Aiden remained just beyond him, out of her reach. The man she longed to be with, married or not, that somehow didn't seem to matter as long as wherever she was, it was with him by her side. But it was Corey who mimicked those words now, brought her back to reality, and summed up her true feelings so easily. Okay, fine, whatever you say, but just so you know, I've got your back, and we can blow this joint in a hot minute. Run away to what truly makes you happy. As if I let you run off with my talent. Both women turned toward the sound of Carter Bain's voice. Eva felt her eyes automatically roll, and she shook her head as Corey stepped between her and Carter. A, she's not your property, and B, if I ran off anywhere, I doubt you or anyone else here would be able to stop me, Corey said, looking Carter in the eye. Carter gave me a stare down that Eva was sure worked well on his underlinings, but she was pleased to experience her first smile of the day when he looked away, eyes cast down in defeat, as she anticipated. She not met a man yet who was a match for her best friend. You're right, Carter started. Excuse me if I came off as impertinent. He put out a hand. I'm Carter Bain, and you are? Corey put out her hand. The best friend and general bullshit blocker. You, Mr. Bain, Need no introduction since you were already on my blocker radar. She then floored him with a smile that could cut grass. Eva looked up between the two of them and let out a long sigh. The potential blow up was dangerous, and there was no way she was getting into the middle of it. Do you two want me to leave you to battle this out, or can you table the fight for later? Carter laughed nervously as he turned back Eva's way. It's that sharp tongue of yours that made you a star, Miss Ward. Eva raised a brow, noting that neither he nor Corey gave her a real answer. Okay, it's Aiden's side now. Aiden told himself he wasn't going to the wedding, that there was no real reason for him to be there. None at all, besides torturing himself, of course. Though not being there was torture enough. He should have listened to his gut and booked himself far away. Taking a trip somewhere, Madagascar maybe, just any place where he'd be safely away from the image of her, especially the image of her while she made sacred vows declaring herself the life partner bound together for real and no joke in the eyes of the law to some asshole. The same ass with whom, though Ada knew she didn't really love him and maybe never really had, she still shared a past connection, and who could make, or most probably already had made, his way back into her heart and her bed. Fuck! This couldn't have worked out any worse if it had been planned that way. Over the past 3 weeks, Aiden has successfully extracted himself from her segment and thrilled his father in the process by delving into the larger picture projects at the network. He even planted seeds about projects that were top on his list. On the surface, his plan was working out well. All he had to do was stay focused, and soon he'd have the best of both worlds. He'd have a seat at the table when it came to decision making at the network and the freedom to go on the road whenever the story needed him. The road. It was supposedly just what he wanted, and now the thought of it made his mouth so dry it seemed filled with sawdust. He couldn't imagine being on the road without her by his side or here waiting for him when he came back home. How ridiculous a thought was that? The man who thrived on having no attachments, the lone wolf, was now howling for a place, no, a person to call home. It was ridiculous, and he needed to just push the thought aside, to block it out and be the man he was meant to be. Life was perfect, and it was high time he started acting like it. Aiden paused to study his reflection in the window. So what was he doing at the moment, pacing around his office like a caged lion? The television trained on the damn morning show, and him hanging on every word spoken by that annoying Jim and that overly animated Diane. He stopped mid-pace when it was announced that coming up was the montage of Eva and Kevin's journey. His stomach twisted at the use of the overused term, and he leaned back against the edge of his desk and watched as Eva's image came on the screen. Journey? What the hell did they know about such a thing? He didn't know why he was surprised at the lump that formed in his throat with that first glimpse of her image. Maybe he was going soft. That's what he got for hanging out so long stateside and getting comfortable in one place. But looking at her in the first still of the too sappy montage and seeing her in her little matching sweater set and those damn pearls brought it all back. First, that surprising kiss in the green room and the searing ball pain that came along shortly thereafter. Then the surprising pleasure that somehow took over his being. He never wanted to let go of that pleasure, but knew he must for both of their sakes. Shit, who would have thought he'd be in even more pain today? He wanted to turn away, perhaps prepare for this afternoon meeting, but instead he rubbed his jaw and stayed rooted where he was, watching and feeling the twisting in his guts as the montage weaved a web, painting Eva and Kevin as a picture-perfect couple. By the time the morning was over and done, they would again be the golden couple, at least for the time being. and she would be the standard of the modern working woman, no longer pitied, but now looked up to. She'd have all she wanted. And wasn't that all that mattered? The camera cut to a more recent image of the two of them on their last date. They were on top of the Empire State Building with violins playing, and Kevin asked Eva to marry him once again, pulling out the ring she stopped wearing 8 weeks before. Aiden closed his eyes and ran his hands across his face before looking at the screen again. Eva nodded and smiled, and once again went into Kevin's arm. The camera edged in, doing a close-up on the ring. To the untrained eye, it all looked like a modern fairy tale. Only a person who knew Eva could see the pain behind that smile. Okay. Can I please have a moment alone with your friend? Carter asked, this time coming at Corey with all the cordial Eva knew she felt was her due. Still, she raised a brow and deferred to Eva, who let out a sign and nodded, letting her friend know it was fine to leave her alone with the slick producer. It's okay. Why don't you go and please check on my mother? I'm sure she's out there driving the crew mad and can use a little reining in. So what is it? Eva asked once Corey left the room. Do you want me to cartwheel down the aisle, or would juggling make you happier? Carter shook his head. Do I really come off as that evil? Should I twirl my dastardly mustache now and complete your picture of me? Eva let out a long sigh and leaned back. No, you really don't. I'm sorry, I don't blame you. You're just doing your job. I understand that. She got up and went to the mirror to check her makeup and smooth her chigon. Don't worry. I'll be ready to walk down the aisles and things will go off without a hitch. What if I told you I don't want you to walk down the aisle? Eva whipped around too quickly and got a little woozy once again. She had to have heard him wrong. Excuse me? You heard me right. What if I don't want you to walk down the aisle? Eva waved a disbelieving hand in front of her face. And what? I don't walk down the aisle and you sue me for breach of contract? Or what? You continue these farce dates and torture me forever? What's your angle now, Mr. Bain? Neither, and no angle. You don't walk down the aisle and you walk away and go on with your life. Free, no saddle to a man who doesn't care for you. What would you know about how Kevin feels about me? This conversation is over. Shouldn't you be out there giving orders to minions or something? You're right. I don't know how Kevin feels about you, but I do know how Aiden feels. And he really cares for you. I've known him for years and I've never seen him like this. Eva closed her eyes against the words. When she opened them again, they were full of hatred for the man in front of her. I think you need to go. I'm not having this conversation with you. But Carter didn't move. Instead, he flipped open a small tablet. You have a good friend there who will go to bat for you. And Aiden has always been that kind of friend for me. Whether it was being a jerk, which was most of the time or not, but it's time I stood up for him. I've never seen him as twisted up about anyone as he is about you. With him, it was always the story first, mission first. He didn't have to stay here or on your project. It was never about your story, but always about you. Eva watched as he pressed play, and she came on the small screen, live, loud, and in screaming, bright colors, having a full-on fit. Carter hit pause. I wanted to use this. I was all ready to go. Aiden told me he'd have me fired if I did, and worse, he'd never speak to me again. That was when I knew. Aiden's been my friend since our school days, and he never makes idle threats. He would have never said that if you didn't mean something to him, even then. He hit play again, and there she was, coming at him, straight for the camera, and then past it and out of sight for their first kiss before the camera went out of focus and headed south. Carter laughed. I'll admit, I got a kick out of that part. Though I don't know what happened when the camera fell, I have my suspicions. Eva shot Carter a look that he brushed off with a grin before hitting play again. This time the footage was of Aiden, and he looked so beautiful, all tall, dark, sexy strength as he helped move a piece of equipment. And then in another shot, he looked great as he gave directions to some riggers. Eva turned to Carter. Why are you wasting my time with this? Patience, please. She let out a frustrated huff. Then she continued to look. The images changed, and there she was, getting ready as he watched solely from his back corner in her apartment. She was climbing the rock wall as he stood poised, ready to run forward to catch her. Then it was her on the screen at the opera, in her red dress, and him watching once again. This time through the monitor, but intent on her every move and even more so on every move of her date. She watched as his face went through every possible emotion from, to irritation, and from there to anger, and then undeniable pain. Then there were the odd times when he was simply looking at her and his eyes would get all dark and full of passion, and something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A soft, soulful look that Eva couldn't dare to hope was love. And she was there too, right back with the same chill, the same thrill she only got from him. Her eyes began to water. Crap, her makeup. Come on, don't cry, please. Aiden would kick my ass if he knew I made you cry. Hell, he'd kick my ass if he knew I was here showing you this, Carter said, surprising her by handing her handkerchief. I didn't do this to make you cry. I only wanted to show you how much you mean to him. Eva blew in the handkerchief and then looked up at Carter. Well, I'm afraid you're totally overestimating things. He's a big boy and can speak for himself. And it speaks volumes that he's not here. No matter what you say, he left me, and then he practically threw Kevin back at me. He's not the hero you're trying to portray with your little videos and cute emotional manipulating editing. She flipped the screen closed and looked at the clock. Now, if you excuse me, I'd like to go and get married and be done with this nightmare once and for all. Girl, you're being stubborn. Eva was about to walk past him on that note, but Carter stopped her with a hand to her elbow. Well, about that. It may not have been his idea to bring Kevin back on the show. Eva's brows drew together as her heart began to race. Just how much of not his idea are we talking? Uh-oh. Eva stood inside the makeshift curtain off tent and waited for her cue. She watched the scene outside the tent on the monitors and was once again overwhelmed by the spectacle of it all. She would be so relieved when this was all behind her and just a story of her distant past. The normal bustling concrete tourist center had been turned into a square block, floral fantasy film set with about every flower imaginable decorating the space. It was almost too much to take in, and Eva felt a twinge of guilt seeping into her melancholy over the spectacle of it all. It was sad, really. This could be a fairy tale dream for someone, but not for her. She supposed for her it could be too, if she were marrying her true love, or even if she were marrying Kevin, the one she thought she knew months ago before the curtain had been lifted and her world had been turned inside out. But now she couldn't take in the tulle, the crystals, the flowers, or the fantasy of it all. All she could see now was the artifice of the background, the little tech wizards behind it all, pulling the strings and making this spectacle happen. Eva let out a common breath and told herself once more that focus was what was called for here as she waited for her cue to come from the assistant PA, letting her know it was time to walk down the aisle. Don't think of the spectacle or the little wizard or the big wizard, Carter Bain, and what he had told her about Kevin and his part in bringing him back. She just had to play her part, and this would all be over soon. It was all timed out, and she had only 30 seconds to get down a rose petal aisle to Kevin, and they had 3 minutes and 30 seconds after that to say their vows before the next commercial break or the show's live timeline would be off. She took in a breath and inwardly shook off the conversation with Carter. There was no need to think of that now. Looking at the screen, she watched as the camera scanned the assembled guests and the wedding party. It reached Kevin and focused. She saw how he checked himself out in the monitor yet again and let out a sign when the fool didn't even hide checking out the ass of the young PA. Part of her almost laughed, but instead she just shook her head. Prince Charming he was not. The camera panned and Eva saw her mother sitting rigid in her chair on the edge of the front row as the guest of honor. She wore a weary smile, and for the first time, Eva could see her as she was. Her mother had given up so much trying to prove herself to be something she wasn't, all to cover for a man who didn't love her as she should have been loved. Suddenly, the waste of it all hit Eva like a kick to the gut, and instead of taking a step forward, getting in the cue position, she took a step back. When she did, she hit something, or better yet, someone solid. Eva stilled. Getting cold feet, princess? Okay. I was wondering when it was going to happen. Aiden's voice rumbled over her like a slow wave, and Eva felt she would have fallen if she hadn't had his chest to lean on and her anger to hold her up. She turned around and looked him in the eye. Absolutely not. I'm just waiting for my cue, and then I'm heading down the aisle. You better than anyone know how important timing is in this business. She lowered her voice. Now will you move so you're not mistakenly in my shot? What if I won't? Instantly, the white hot anger bubbled up. Are you freaking kidding me right now? Her voice went high, and Aiden grinned. There's that fire, kitten. I told you I always finish my jobs. Eva shook her head. I do not have time for this. Not today, I don't. Aiden leaned in closer to her ear, and his warm breath caressed her with each word. If not today, then when? If not today, then I risk being too late, and I can't wait another moment to ask you to forgive me. Eva could not believe her ears. 30 seconds, 30 freaking seconds when he had his weeks. And now he came to her with this? She turned away and looked back at the monitors. So many people were waiting to watch her marry the not quite man of her dreams. And here he came with this now. Girl, didn't you just wonder where he was? He there now? Stop playing. Ugh. She found it hard to breathe as she imagined all the eyes focused and waiting for her to walk down the aisle. She felt Aiden's expected presence and a welcome but heavy being engulfed her. She closed her eyes briefly. This definitely was not as romantic as it was portrayed in the movies. The PA peeked his head around and announced 15 seconds until she was up. Eva opened her eyes and looked at Aiden. I don't know why you're saying this, she said through clenched teeth and a churning stomach. We had an arrangement, but not attachments. You did nothing wrong. There is nothing to forgive. She heard Aiden clear his throat before he spoke up again. But there is, princess. You were right. I am a liar. I'm so sorry. I should have been honest with you from the beginning and told you I'm in love with you. Eva sucked in a breath and closed her eyes again as the impact of his declaration hit her, cutting off her air and sending her world spinning. Just then, the Parisian curtains opened wide and the PA announced her cue to go. Eva forced herself to focus, then looked back, and her eyes locked with Aiden. His was dark and glassy, and for the first time, full of hope. She gave him a half smile and blinked back her threatening tears. You know you're a real jerk, Walker. Like I said, timing is everything. The lights were so bright they were almost blinding, and the music of the piano and the violin had a shrill, almost screeching quality to it. But Eva blocked it all out and focused on the task at hand. She counted her seconds. All she had to do was watch her time, and this would all be over soon. She saw them, all the smiling faces looking at her with admiration. She was doing what had to be done. She passed her mother and saw something like acceptance, reflected in her eyes, but still lingering below the surface, there was a hint of sadness. Looking up at the end of the aisle, she got to Kevin. So tall, so perfect in his tuxedo, he would be perfect match for her. Him and her, the two of them wearing well-worn masks of socially accepted love, they created a beautiful picture. Or would if only Kevin were looking her way and not watching himself on the monitor off to the left. Eva smiled as she reached Kevin's side and whispered in his ears, "You have got to be kidding me, but we're supposed to get married here and now," Kevin yelled, and the crowd gasped. "You can't stand me up at the altar. Do you know how many women would kill to marry me?" What the hell happened? What happened? Did I miss it? Was she whispering in his ear? Okay, maybe she whispered she can't do it in his ear. Okay. "Yes, Kevin, I think I do. It's just I'm no longer one of them," Eva said with a grin as she shoved her bouquet into his empty arms. She turned, catching Corey's wide grin, and started back down the aisles with a newfound energy. She passed her mother and saw the shock and then the surprising smile that gave her the strength to take off into a run the rest of the way and into Aiden's waiting arm. She hit him with full force of her body, making him grunt. "So it seems your balls are in jeopardy once again, Mr. Walker." His grin spread wide and her insides went soft. "I'm not worried about my balls at all as long as you have my heart." His brows came together thin, and Eva looked at him confused. "But will you make me one promise, princess?" "What's that?" Ada wrapped her arm tight around her waist as he lifted his other hand to her face. At first, he brushed his finger across her bottom lip. Then his hand went further down to the pearls at her throat as he fingered them seductively. "When you finally let me take you out on a date, will you promise to keep your pearls on?" Eva let out a laugh as she caught the spark in his eyes and let it charge her from the inside out. She felt renewed as the rest of the spectators seemed to fade away. The idea of millions of viewers from around the country judging her every action vanished to dust, and she was left with nothing in her mind's eye but she and Aiden as she leaned forward once again towards his irresistible lips. "For you, my love, always." The end. Okay, I'm gonna make this real brief as possible. The last chapter for me was, I didn't get anything from it. I didn't get no funny feels. I didn't get no oohs. I didn't get no ahs. It was so long and so much unnecessary information. I was expecting it to be a little bit better, but that was my expectations. I can't fault the writer of the book. That was just how I wanted it to end. I wanted it to end with a bang, some shooting stars and stuff like that, but it didn't. But in the end, they came together, and with the help of a friend and stuff like that, they didn't come together amongst them two and stand up and declare they grown as hell and they could do what they want. But okay, so if I had to rate this book, I give it a 3. I give it 3 out of 5 stars, because some chapters were extremely too long. Some chapters had unnecessary information. New characters were being introduced when they had nothing to do with the story, and that time was wasted. They could have shortened the story, could have been shortened. And then my opinion about Eva, I felt like she was a contradiction. One minute she's this strong-headed woman that could go toe-to-toe with Aiden, but couldn't stand up to her mom. And that part I just couldn't understand, because I'm not a people pleaser, especially when it comes to family, trying to please a family member, a mother. I never had it, so I don't know what I would do, but I don't think I would, because I'm like, if I'm grown, I'm grown. And the same thing with Aiden. He had me when I thought that, when he was a good guy and he was very respectful, the communication was there. But then when the moment needed his communication, he dropped the ball. It was like, why would you stop communicating now? Was you, just because you fell in love with her? Like, you was in love with her from the jump, and that didn't stop you from communicating with her. And I didn't like that part about it. And the wording, like some of the words that she used in this book, I've never seen before, so I didn't know how to pronounce it. And it's just like, you could have made it, if you could have made the wording simpler, because you dragged out everything else. So why put these big old words in unnecessarily? Well, that's just me, because I didn't never see it before. But I'm glad this book is over, and that's just the ending of it. So if you've listened to this whole book with me, let me know your thoughts. Let's open a conversation, see if it's worthy of a conversation, and let me know what you think. And until my next book next month, I shall see y'all there. If y'all plan on listening with me, I'm going to do things differently, but I'll introduce what I'm going to do. I'm going to do things similar, same, but a little different. But you'll find out what it is in my next book. So I hope you enjoyed it. And if I didn't say thank you already, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for being here and following with me. And until next time, bye.